Let's get into the crypto space, especially after the US presidential debate sent moves in Bitcoin. How is this going to impact market volatility for digital assets? For an outlook on that, Billy Leung from Global X ETFs joins me up on the desk. Some very exciting moves happening in markets as we watch this exciting debate too. Just tell us what happened, Billy.
I think even more interesting is probably going back, to sort of a little further. And I think to sort of monitor these asset classes, price movements and levels, it's always good to find a specific point of reference. And I think for this exercise, I think it's good to look at the August 5th volatility spike. I think that was a big event. It was a good reset and it provided us with fresh data. So if we looked at, for example, Bitcoin's movement since then, Bitcoin was actually up 8% since August 5th. Ethereum was actually flat. But what's more interesting is if you look at equities as benchmarked by S&P 500, it's up about 6%. But gold is only up about 4% since then. So the question is, what is the divergence and can we explain it? So that goes back to your question of what's really been happening. So if it's really about interest rate cuts, we should see more risky assets being pumped higher, but we're not seeing Ethereum being propped higher. If it's all about recessionary and growth fears, we should have seen more safe haven like gold being outperforming, but that's not the case as well. So I think the key takeaway to answer your question is that what's been happening in the past month plus the election debate is that, we're seeing multiple forces in the market playing, macro, interest rates and president election. And number two, more interestingly, is that the digital assets or cryptocurrencies is truly a unique asset class of its own. It's not behaving against equities or gold. There's other fundamentals driving Bitcoin performance and also Ethereum underperformance.
Well, what is the key one then, particularly when you look at the change between those two?
Yeah, so I think Ethereum is probably one that's been getting a lot of questions. Billy, why is it underperforming Bitcoin? Why is it underperforming digital currencies? And, the question is, again, it's just like equities. When we look at it, there's different fundamentals driving different stocks, and they're all equities. And it's the same as digital assets. There's different fundamentals driving different asset within the digital assets as well. So, for Ethereum more specifically, is that there is some, regulatory oversight recently. We have seen on the positive, they've approved the Ethereum ETF a few months ago, but the SEC is still overseeing a few decentralized finance applications. They're still looking at some cryptocurrencies, and we just had the US House of Financial Services convening and discussing applications of DeFi and how the brokers should work. So, how I see it is that, these are very short-term factors, but more fundamental factors we should look at for, Ethereum is that there is some technical upgrade as well. So I won't go into too much of this, but we've seen sort of Ethereum move from layer 1 to level 2. What essentially is that it's making it more scalable, more faster and more cheaper, but it's also pulling some demand away from the existing volume, which is pulling the price down as well. So, there are a few factors driving the Ethereum underperformance, but these to me are all short-term factors.
So what is the longer term outlook, particularly for the likes of Ethereum?
Yeah. So, just to sort of be clear, I still think that macro factors do impact these asset classes, but just to a small extent. From a statistical point of view, the correlation between digital assets is about 0.1 to 0.2 with equity. So it doesn't explain the full movements. So fundamentally, we are still very positive on the digital assets and cryptocurrency in the longer term. For Ethereum specifically, like I mentioned, there's number one, they are going through that upgrade from layer 1 to layer 2. It is going to be more scalable. It is going to be cheaper and much faster to run, and it's just a matter of time. Number two is that Ethereum has also gone through an upgrade where the coding is now from a proof of stakes. And what that means essentially is that it's going to be cheaper to mine Ethereum in the longer term. So these two factors is going to drive that demand, application, use cases, and also scalability for Ethereum in the longer term. But again, we have that sort of short-term volatility due to these sort of short-term hurdles we have to get over.
So when we look as well, some of the reduced consumption by miners as well, and how that's affected price, just talk us through the implications of that.
Yeah. So through the upgrade of Ethereum, we are seeing a lower cost now. So that means, the cost base is lower, so which means that, it drags the actual price down as well. So there is that factor as well. In terms of expanding that scalability, we have seen, other cryptocurrencies being scaled from layer 1 to level 2, which have been successful. For example, Solana is a very successful cryptocurrency, and that's been successful. So there are cases where it's actually been good that they've scaled up. So I think in terms of the longer term, these are all good movements, and it's just a matter of time. And how long it will take depends on the applications, depends on how the tech advance. but we are moving forward as opposed to being a more impact on the structural story.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see as well the impact that we've just seen during the debate, but of course didn't look that good for Donald Trump.
Yeah, so I think during the whole election, the odds of Kamala Harris did go up, and it was somewhat negative for the digital assets. But again, this is a short-term volatility, and it's really interesting because people talk about how obviously on the Trump side it's a pro cryptocurrency, but on the Kamala Harris side, she's never anti.
Yeah, they're just sort of making their own.
Exactly. So
narrative.
it's a relative basis, but it doesn't mean it's destructive for the whole sector. And I think this shows, if you look at the Global X Ethereum ETF, the Global X Bitcoin ETF, we have seen net inflows, throughout the year, and that shows how there's increasing investor adoption, increasing institutional adoption, and just overall use cases.